What's up, guys? Welcome back to Brandi's 2 Cents. As you know, I'm Brandi, and before we get into this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share the link. We definitely want other people to get more dope content like this. As you guys see, my big brother's back. I guess as far as y'all is concerned, it's Gabriel, your financial friend. But today, I really want to get into the details of budgeting. I feel like out of all of my different financial circles, like you're one of the best budgeters I know. And it's like your spreadsheet is so detailed. I gotta ask questions to understand it. Once you understand it, it really changes the game. So I kind of want to get like your thoughts on hindsight being 2020. What are some tips that you have for people who are struggling with their budgeting or don't budget and want to start? Just kind of talk about that for me.
Yeah, great question. So what I use Google Sheets. I know you can pay for different type of budgets, but I like to be in tune with my budget. So what I do is, the first step I would say is write out all your expenses, all your fixed costs for the month. Don't leave anything out. I don't care what it is or how, quote, embarrassing it is.
Gym memberships.
Yeah, if you got a subscription to watching rats on YouTube or something like that, put that in there too. So I do 3 different budgets. I have a monthly budget, which I have all my expenses and all my income. I have a quarterly budget, which did I incorporate some of my goals for the quarter. Then I have an annual budget as well, which is where I want to be at the end of the year. However, monthly is the most important. So I also categorize my spending. So I have different categories in my budget, and I color code those to keep it kind of simple. So dining out and groceries for me are in the same line item because it all has to do with
dining, eating.
Yeah, food, right? So that's kind of how I do it there. And then I adjust that as I go throughout the month as far as my expenses. So I have it automatically linked where, okay, if I spend $25 and pizza, it automatically deducts from my budget for dining out and for groceries as well. Okay. So it's kind of it's a foolproof, dummy-proof budget where all I have to do is input what I spend every single day, and I do that. You can ask my wife, Shanice. Every night I go to the budget and I add up what I spent. It also helps when I try to use 1 to 2 cards as it kind of targets my spending. So I have a card specifically for dining out and groceries, and then I have another card specifically for bills. When I say card, those are credit cards that I use for my monthly budgets, but I pay those off in full at the end of every month. So that's kind of the strategy that I take. A quick tip that I would say is don't overcomplicate a simple process. I think a lot of people kind of walk into budgeting and hey, I need to have this or that. No, simply have your spreadsheet, and the first step is inputting all your expenses and your bills. And then what I have also is I have a projected sheet. So it's every month, let's just say I'll throw out a number. I project to spend $200 in eating out.
Okay.
But then I have the actual where am I at by the end of the month, right? So there's been months where that number is 400. So I'm okay, let me adjust my budget a little bit to be more realistic. I don't want to go to 400, but maybe I need 275. Inflation is real. It's at 8%. Everything is more expensive. My budget's inflated as well to account for that.
Okay.
So you want to always make sure that you have a realistic expense and realistic kind of a buffer in there as well to make sure that you're capturing all your expenses, your bills. And then the key, I would say, is have a category for random, please. Just this morning,
always gonna come up.
It's gonna come up. Just this morning, I was telling Brandi, my daughter went to go take a shower, and the water did not shut off. I don't know how to fix that. I tried, and I was getting water everywhere, so I had to call somebody out. It was $542, right? Mm-hmm. I have a budget category for random to be able to account for that, because that's what really throws a lot of people off. It's not necessarily the month. It's the, hey, well, what happens when I get a flat tire? I didn't know I had to replace a $200 tire.
Right.
So I have that random category.
So I would say, of course it's it's just me and then you have a family, but I feel like you can speak to it from both sides. So if we kind of stick to that food budget part. Mm-hmm. So for instance, if you have a $300 overall food budget, whether it's do you put groceries and eating out together, or is that right?
Yeah. So
okay.
I start off with them separate, but they're in the same color category.
Okay. And so with that being said, right, if we just take groceries as separate, mm-hmm. and you put $300, what's the practical way in order to stick to that budget? Because I feel like that's where it can get complicated. Some people I got my budget, it's color coded, I printed it off, I know how to get to it, but like I'm having trouble sticking to it. I'm having trouble like I guess the word would be maximizing.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you're a shoe head, right?
Yes,
yeah, you're a shoe head.
I
So
am.
if I came to you and said I want to buy a pair of Jordans, I like the 7s, right? And I said I want to spend $75, what would you say?
You're probably not getting them.
Right. I think that's the issue with most of our budgets. Is the challenge of sticking to the budget is you don't have a realistic baseline. So I think a lot of people say, okay, let's say I want to spend $200 a month in groceries. Well, if you have a family of 4, you're not going to spend that. So one of the issues is that we don't have a clear idea of what we are spending to even set a budget. So that's why when I talk with people, I'm like, okay, you want to create a budget. Have you tracked your spending in the last month to even know where to start? Or are you just throwing numbers that you found on the Google spreadsheet somewhere that look good for somebody that lives in Kansas?
Right.
And not in the DC area like us where things are more expensive.
Right.
So I think that's probably the key is to set the parameters first by knowing what you spent in the previous month, and that will help you a lot because you can stick to something that has consistency and actual meat to the bone versus something that you kind of just pull abstract numbers out because it sounds good.
Right. Okay, so basically what you're saying is, all right, I look at last month's numbers, and then from there, if I do need to cut somewhere, I can, but at least I know like what that average was I was spending, that way I can make adjustments from there. Because I think for me, I used to be like, yeah, I'm gonna spend $100 a week, and I was like, there's some weeks I'm spending way less than that, some weeks I'm spending more than that, but like for a while, I was just kind of like grabbing from that random to kind of make up for that. But then when I needed to get a new tire, like when I went to the dentist and I had a cavity, like I noticed that I was actually like I guess you could say overspending from random, which would then go into savings, to then go to emergency fund at the end of the month. Yeah, I kind of stayed in my budget, but now my emergency fund's gone.
Right.
So
no, I think that's key is setting those realistic expectations and things that could go wrong.
Right.
Because if nothing goes wrong, you have that buffer of random. And this is from a man that's been married for 7 years, right? We usually have random spending every single month. I never really get to save from that just because life happens.
Right.
You forget about cousin JJ's birthday party. That's a $75 gift card.
Can't go without a gift.
Right, exactly. One hack that I do with budgeting is not applicable to everybody, but I think it relates to many of us is some people get paid bi-weekly, which means you get 26 paychecks a year.
Right.
If you can budget off of 2 paychecks a month, that means twice a year you have an entire extra paycheck that you can do whatever you want with. So let that sink in. Let's just say your paychecks, we'll use the easy number. Let's say it's $1,000, right? That's actually $2,000 a year that you can use on those 2 paychecks to then do things that you want to do, maybe travel or book a vacation or things of that nature. And that's really a hack that Shalisa and I have been doing for years, is taking those 2 extra paychecks and using them for either something fun, debt reduction, savings, investing, or what have you.
That's good. So I guess part 2 to that question is, what do you do with that extra random money at the end of the month if you didn't spend it? Like, you're saving it, you're putting it towards debt.
Right.
Spending it.
It depends. Every wanted to spend it, right?
Right.
Every dollar should have a plan. So if you have extra money, it goes back to what we have talked about before, is like, are you in the middle of a debt reduction season? Are you in an investing season? Are you in a season where you're just flourishing? You're like, hey, I want a vacation or what have you. I want to put money away for that. Every dollar should have some home, somewhere to go. So you should already have a plan at the beginning of the month. Remember, I mentioned a quarter too, to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do with extra money that I have, quote, laying around.
Right. Okay, no, that's good. Like, I gotta fine tune that whole extra column, because like before my extra spending was a little bit less, but now that I've gotten more, I still need to like make sure I stick to those principles so I can make it to the rest of my days. So
right.
It's always good to ask.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard too.
All right, so that was a lot of information. So like, if somebody's asking you, what's the big takeaway? What is it?
Yeah, I would say start somewhere. There's budget sheets, budget templates all over the place. For me, I use Google Sheets. There's budget templates in there, and then track your spending for a month prior to you really starting your budget, so you know where you land. And if you've already been budgeting for years or months, I would say go back to your very first budget and see how you're doing. So you should have these files saved somewhere. A plan without any action items or any kind of accountability is a waste. So make sure that as you're budgeting, you're seeing your progress throughout the process. And I think that's a good start for anybody.
That's good. As always, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys soon.